First off, thank you guys for attending. I really appreciate you guys coming on the call tonight. And again, taking time out of your busy day. I realize a lot of you probably have kids. You've worked all day. It's 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I'd like to think I've got some really good information to share with you as well that, regardless of the age kid that you're working with, whether we're talking middle school, high school, college age soccer players, this stuff is going to make a profound impact and really help you guys take your athletes to the next level. So why are you here? And this is something I tried to ask myself before I created the webinar, is trying to figure out, why are you guys here and how is this going to benefit you? And at least at our gym, we get a lot of the same questions time and time and time again. Number one, how do we get faster? I want my kid to get faster because they're too slow. They can't keep up with the game. Or my kid isn't strong enough. I just need a little bit more size, a little bit more strength so they can hold defenders off, so they can play at a higher level. And of course, my athletes aren't in good enough shape. They don't feel like their conditioning is where it needs to be. And this is one of the biggest issues that we run into with a lot of these middle and high school age kids that come to our gym. They want to perform at the next level. Maybe technically or tactically they're playing at a very high level, but physically they're not where we want them to be. So these are the things that we constantly run up against. How do we make a more physically imposing soccer player? And to kind of go along that same path, a lot of times people just don't know where to go. They don't have a good reference. They don't know who to trust because there's so much information out there these days when it comes to physical preparation, when it comes to athletic development, and sometimes it's as easy as following the person on Facebook or Instagram that has the most likes. So, ultimately you guys are here because you want your child or your athlete to have the best possible chance for success. And that's what I want for you as well. That's why I got into this industry. That's why I'm passionate about helping athletes. Because, I didn't have somebody such as myself, or I didn't have some of the staff at IFAST when I was growing up. So that's what I want to talk about here today is, how do we take these young kids and these developing athletes and help them take their soccer skills to the next level? So here's the big question. How do we get better athletically without sacrificing sports skill? That is the name of the game, because I'm not a soccer skill coach. I don't claim to be. That's not my niche or my focus. But how do we marry what I want to do with these athletes, and how do we marry that with what you want to do from a technical or a tactical perspective? How do we marry those two worlds of high-level athletic development with high-level skill or technical or tactical development? And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Now, before we go there, I want to give you guys just a little bit of insight into who I am and why I got into this. And I promise I'm not going to drone on and on, but you can see this very large human being right here. Man, when I grew up, soccer was just not on the table. I got to play a lot when I was a young kid. I got to play, through the YMCA, and I grew to love the sport. But as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s in Indiana, there wasn't a very strong soccer program. I didn't play it in middle school. We didn't have it until like my senior year of high school. So my first love athletically was basketball. And as you can tell, I wasn't the most physically imposing kid at 16, 17, 18 years old, but I would do anything possible to get better, to take my skills and to take my game to the next level. Love being in the gym. And keep in mind, I went to Muncie Burris, which, if you know anything about Indiana, very, very small high school. I graduated with 47 kids. And we didn't even get a weight room until I think I was 15 or 16 years old. So in between my sophomore and junior years of high school, I finally get a weight room. And, it's mind-blowing now because we think about these middle and high school gymnasiums and these athletic weight rooms that these people have. They're just phenomenal. But, I don't get one until in between my sophomore and junior years. And I'm doing all of like the worst things ever, right? I'm doing like machine-based circuits. I'm doing sets of 100. I have no clue what I'm doing. But the crazy thing is, like with a young developing athlete, you can do almost anything and get better. So I'm basically doing all the wrong things, but I'm still seeing an impact on my game. So as far as basketball goes, there's a little bit more zip on my passes. There's a little bit more range on my jump shot. And the coolest thing for me was, a lot of these bigger kids that would come back in the summer for open gym that used to push me around, well, now they're not pushing me around anymore. And in fact, as I got better over the next years, I got smarter about my own training. Now, all of a sudden, I'm pushing them around. So I wasn't good enough to play basketball at the next level, but this really kind of whetted my appetite. It let me know that there was something that I could do here. And if I could merge my passion for sports with my passion for strength training and combine that into a profession, that I was going to be a very happy camper. So over the years, I've kind of been everywhere. I've done a little bit of everything. I went to Ball State, got a bachelor's in exercise science, a master's in sports biomechanics. I spent 3 years in Fort Wayne doing rehab, another 3 years back here in Indianapolis doing one-on-one in-home personal training. And then 9 years ago, my business partner, Bill Hartman, and I co-founded IFAST. And this is where we get to talk soccer, because over the last 9+ years, I have been blessed to work with some of the highest level soccer players in the United States. Whether we're talking about Lori Lindsay, Eric Zavaleta, Chad Marshall, we've got Ray Gaddis from the Philadelphia Union, and of course, I've been working with the Indy 11 for the last 4 years. So I've been blessed to work with athletes as small as 11 and 12 years old when they're just getting started, to high school, to college, up to these professional level athletes. And it's really been a fun journey, because these are such not only amazing soccer players, but amazing people to work with as well. And every one of these athletes that you see here has a tremendous work ethic. You can see very quickly why they're at the next level. But you guys can tell, I just get jazzed up. The second we start talking about developing these athletes and taking them to the next level, it gets me excited. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about, is how we can take, whether it's a middle or high school age kid up to a professional athlete and get them to the next level. So what's the plan? I've kind of built this up a little bit, and I think before we get into the nitty-gritty details of writing a workout or planning a training session, we need an overarching feel for where we want this to go. And I think there's really 3 steps when we're thinking big picture with our soccer players. Step number 1 is simple. You got to have an off season. And, hopefully I don't lose any of you on this. I don't start losing attendees because they say, you got to have an off season, guys. And it doesn't matter whether it's a young child or a professional level athlete. The people that take the time and dedicate themselves physically in the off season, they're more robust, they're stronger, they're faster, and bottom line is they're less likely to break down. And it doesn't have to be 6 months. It could be 8, 10, 12 weeks. But if you can get your athletes to dedicate themselves to improving themselves physically in the off season, I guarantee it pays dividends across the line. So number 1, you got to have an off season. Number 2, you got to do the right things in the off season. And this is something where, doing anything is better than nothing, but it's not as simple as just going in the gym and lifting a little bit and then going out and running some gassers or doing the beep test, whatever the case may be. Like, that's not going to get you where you need to be. You got to have a little bit more sophisticated approach. And when I started this, back in 2000, working with athletes, we called ourselves strength and conditioning coaches. And that's kind of how we thought of things. We were either very strength focused, we were very conditioning focused, and that was really it. And nowadays our focus is much more on what we would call physical preparation or athletic development. And that's where we want to develop a really well-rounded athlete. So you can't just have an off season, you got to do the right things. And then last but not least, and this goes beyond tonight's talk, if you guys are interested, I'd be happy to do a future webinar on this topic, but you got to keep doing something throughout the competitive season. And, doing number 1 and doing number 2, those are fantastic. Those get you in the ball game, and I guarantee your athletes see a result. But you got to keep doing something throughout the season to maintain that progress. And there's nothing more frustrating for a coach or an athlete than somebody that goes in, they kill it in the off season, and they see this amazing physical transformation. And then 7, 8, 9 months go down the line, and they come back at the end of their season, and they're kind of right back to where they were again. So if you do a little bit of maintenance work throughout the in-season period, I guarantee when you go back to the next off-season, you're starting at a better place. And now you continue to build and grow your athletes as a result. All right, so you got to have this overarching game plan to start. Now, when it comes to writing an actual training session, this is where, I think a checklist is really helpful. And if you guys are readers, I'm an avid reader, so Atul Gawande wrote this awesome book called The Checklist Manifesto. And basically, over the course of like 200 pages, there's a ton of stories, but there's a very common theme. And that is, you got to use checklists if you don't want to make mistakes. There's a reason surgeons and doctors use checklists. There's a reason airline pilots use checklists. It's so that you don't forget things and that you don't make mistakes. So that's essentially what we tried to do when it came to developing or writing a training program for our athletes. We didn't want to just randomly throw exercises at the wall and just kind of go with, whatever the guy on Instagram says we should do. We want to have a system or a formula so that we write consistently great programs. So the R7 approach is our 7-step approach or 7-step system to write an off-season training program. The first part of every program is release. And don't worry, I'll get you these notes later. And also I'll dive into each one of these elements in more depth later on. So the first thing that we do is we release. We get in, we do some foam rolling or maybe a little bit of soft tissue work to try and loosen our athletes up. The second piece is a reset, which helps optimize position. And I'll give you guys a practical example of why that's important here in just a little bit. Number 3, our readiness element. We try and get them primed. We try and get them ready for their training session. R4 is the reactive part of the program. So this is our speed, our power, our agility, our quickness drills. R5 is our resistance or our strength training. R6 is our resiliency or our conditioning work. And obviously, as a soccer coach, you know how important conditioning is, but we got to do it the right way. And then last but not least, if you guys take nothing else away from this program, know and understand that recovery is the name of the game. And so if you do nothing else at the end of this webinar, but you start employing strategic recovery strategies at the end of your training sessions, I guarantee your athletes are going to perform better each and every training session. So that's kind of an overview of how it looks, but to give you guys a more visual example, here's how it might look in an actual training session. Because imagine a kid that just sat in school for the last 7.5, 8 hours, and then you put them in a car and you drive them to the gym or you drive them to practice. They're not ready to go out and just start playing. What you need to do is have kind of a systematic approach to make sure that they're ready to train at a high level. So again, when we start our athletes on a training session, they're going to do a little bit of foam rolling or a little bit of release work first. From there, we're going to do some positional breathing exercises or what we call resets to try and open up their movement options, to try and get them moving a little bit better. Then we're going to start warming them up. We're going to get them loose. We're going to prime their system and get them ready for R4, which is our reactive piece. And again, when you train speed, power, quickness, you got to do it when you're fresh and you got to do it when you're warmed up. From there, as you start to fatigue, we're going to hit the weights. When you're really tired at the end, that's the ideal time to train conditioning, to try and challenge the energy systems that are involved in soccer. And then the last piece is recovery, right? And just making sure that our athletes walk out feeling better than when they walked in. So it's this nice kind of bell curve is how an actual training session looks. Now, when it comes to the R7 approach, there's a lot of benefits to us as coaches, and it gives us that system to work from and allows us as a staff to communicate very easily amongst each other. But I think one of the biggest reasons, and I didn't necessarily know it 100% at the time, but as we started rolling this out, we started to see a huge increase in athlete buy-in. So I'm going to come back to this slide just for a second here, and I want to show you guys getting ahead of myself here. Show you the words. So when we talk about R7 and we talk about release, right? Everybody that's ever foam rolled knows that it hurts for a little bit when you're on it, but when you get up, you've got a little bit more motion, a little bit more mobility. Maybe your joints don't hurt quite as bad. So there's an emotive response that comes with it, right? Readiness is another one. Like, oh yeah, that just makes sense. I'm preparing my body to train. So as we started rolling all this out and I started introducing it with our athletes, It just so happened one of the first athletes that I started working with was this guy named Chad Marshall. And keep in mind, I was in the soccer world, but I didn't have an idea of just how good this guy was. My good friend Danny O'Rourke, who I was working with for probably the 2 previous off seasons, brought Chad to us. And the knock on Chad at the time, keep in mind he was a 2-time MLS Defender of the Year. He'd played for the U.S. men's national team. The guy was pretty darn good at soccer. Well, when I get him, the knock is, well, Chad doesn't work hard enough. He's not a fit guy. He doesn't take his physical fitness seriously. And so I start working with Chad, and I maybe have some of these thoughts in my brain, but look, Chad's an inquisitive guy. He's a very smart athlete, and he's constantly peppering me with questions like, why are we doing this? How is this going to benefit me? So he had all these questions, but luckily I had thought through every element of his program. I could tell you why every set rep scheme was in there, why every exercise was in there. So boom, 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 I'm answering his questions, and I had a very immediate buy-in from him. And luckily for me, Chad got traded that year. He played for Seattle. I can't take credit for this, but he had an amazing year. The team had an amazing year, and he ended up winning MLS Defender of the Year for the 3rd time. So I tell you all this to let you know that athlete buy-in is absolutely a critical component of what we do. And I think if you're using this R7 system to help plan and organize your workouts, it's going to increase buy-in, and ultimately it's going to get you better results. So if we really dial it down, every great training session has 3 elements. We prepare the athlete. We get them ready so that they can go in the gym or they can go on the pitch and they can train. And then that final piece after they've trained is we recover. We get them moving in the right direction. We kickstart that recovery process. So let's dive in. Again, I don't want to keep you guys all night. I'm sure you have other things that you rather be doing. So let's talk about preparation and getting our athletes ready for an awesome training session. Why do we prep for a session? I mean, it's a pretty simple question, right? Why don't we just have our athletes just go in the gym and start sprinting or start lifting heavy weights? And I think there's numerous reasons. Number 1, it improves position. And I'm going to show you guys a really practical example of that here in a minute. Number 2, it improves mobility. And I think one of the biggest issues that comes up in our gym, and one of the common complaints that parents and coaches alike have, is that our athletes are too stiff. They don't have enough mobility. Well, if we go through a proper warm-up, we're going to alleviate a lot of those issues. And then last but not least, we got to prep the body for training. And again, I'm not going to bore you guys with science speak, but the nervous system, your brain, and how it interacts with your muscles reigns king. So we have to make sure the nervous system and the brain are ready to go. So it's really that 3-step process. We go through some release work, we reset the body with specific breathing exercises, and then we finish it off with a little bit of readiness and a little bit of warm-up work. So when we talk about release work, foam rolling, there's a lot of ideas as to why it works. Honestly, I'm a practitioner. I don't care so much about the science behind it. I just want to know, does this work, and does it create a response? And anybody that's ever foam rolled will tell you that foam rolling and release work can help relax tight or stiff tissues. It may not last forever. In fact, it may not even last past the end of our training session. But in the short term, it buys us a little bit of mobility. It loosens up those tissues a little bit so that ultimately we can train at a higher level. Second, it's going to improve our mobility, and especially as soccer players, whether we're talking about their calves, their quads, their hamstrings, their lower back, a lot of these athletes have mobility issues. So if I've got a very simple tool that I can use to address these issues early on in a training session, I'm going to use it. Now, I will tell you this, and one of the reasons I'm fairly self-assured when I do talks like this is because I've made every mistake in the book, guys. I guarantee it. And one of the things that I did early on with some of my biggest and stiffest clients, like I had one guy, he was going into the Secret Service. He was a huge, strong guy, but he had just issues everywhere: shoulders, knees, back, hips. And so I would have this guy foam roll like 12 different areas. before he would train. It would take him like 15 to 20 minutes to roll out before he ever got started. So now I really try and strip it down, and I try and make 3 to 5 areas max. So 2 to 3 minutes, foam roll, get a few things loose, and then we get into your training session. Now, I want to give you guys a practical example here, and I'm hoping you're watching this and enjoying it from the comfort of your own home. But I want to give you a practical example here. So if you're sitting down, please find just a little area to stand up just for a second, because I think this is a really powerful example that I need you to feel for it to make the most sense. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand up. I want you to take your feet about, a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a big breath in, kind of lift your chest up real big. If you've ever squatted in the weight room, this is how a lot of people teach you to squat. So you take that big breath in, and what you should feel is your lower rib cage and your chest kind of poke out. You should feel some tension in your lower back. It may not feel particularly comfortable, right? But kind of lock yourself in. And then from this position, I want you to try and squat down as low as you can. All right, just give it a shot. Try 1 or 2 reps and get a feel for, number 1, just how it feels. And number 2, how low you can squat, because it's probably not going to feel all that great. Now, there's a reason powerlifters squat like this if they want to push maximum weight, but as athletes, that may not be the best position for us. So now let's try the alternative. Let's move your feet in just a little bit, say hip shoulder width apart. Now, I want you to unlock your knees just a little bit, right? So you can feel your whole foot, and then reach your arms out really far as you can out in front of your body. All right, now from this position, give me a little bit of an exhale. And now try and squat as low as you can. And if you're trying this at home, I guarantee it's a massive difference, right? How big, I don't necessarily know because I can't see you, but I guarantee it made a massive impact. Now, this blows people's minds, and I do this a lot with my athletes, and they're like, oh my gosh, like what did you just do? And I have some sort of corny joke most of the time that I throw at them, but ultimately what I did is I improved their position, right? And that's what resets do. So resets are really targeted breathing exercises. A lot of our athletes are very good at moving air into the front side of the body, and they really struggle driving air into the back side of the body, okay? So what I need them to do is, in this case, Jack is reaching long. He's inhaling and trying to drive the air into the back side of his body. And it does some cool stuff. It helps us optimize position, because in my world, in a biomechanist world, I want the pelvis and the rib cage, I want them sort of facing each other. A lot of times, and a lot of athletes, we're in what we would call an extended position, right? That chest is really up and out. The pelvis is tipped forward a little bit. The abs are kind of long. That's why everybody says, I need more core strength or core stability. It's because they're in the wrong starting position. So resets help us optimize position. And when I optimize position, I improve mobility. So this is what you just saw in that squatting example. I didn't stretch you. I didn't change anything about you structurally. All I did was I put you in a better position to express the natural mobility that your body has. So it's a pretty cool thing. When we reset position, it unlocks our body's natural athleticism. Now, when we do this, it also allows us to flex and bend a little bit easier. A lot of these athletes that break down now, they've lost their brakes. They've lost their ability to absorb force. So if I can give them a little bit of motion back, if I can restore some rotation through certain joints, some flexion through certain joints, it's going to reduce the likelihood of injury. Now, when we put this together, again, made all the mistakes in the book. I used to do like 4 or 5 of these types of resets before I'd even start a training session. So people would be breathing for like 15, 20 minutes. Now it's 1 to 2 exercises. So you guys can see I've really streamlined everything that I do to try and make it time efficient, because I want people to enjoy coming in the gym. I want them to get a great workout, but I don't want it to take 2, 2.5, 3 hours. It shouldn't take that. 60 to 75 minutes a lot of times is all you need. So when it comes to your reset, 1 to 2 positions, and then you move on. Last but not least, with regards to training and getting ready for that training session, is our readiness component. So readiness, very simply, it improves mobility. So we've kind of got this common theme here. We want to improve mobility in the warm-up. We also want to increase tissue temperature. And I don't know how old all of you are. I'm 39 this year. And I remember when I used to go to sports practices. And what's the first thing they had you do 20, 25 years ago? You get on the line and you run laps, or you run end to end a couple times. And then you go and you get in a circle and you static stretch. So I'm not too keen on the static stretching part. I don't think that's necessarily what you need before a session. We found kind of dynamic mobility or dynamic stretching works better before a session. But there's something to just that general tissue preparation, that general tissue warming. Because what we find is when the tissue is warm, it's more pliable, so you're more flexible, your joints feel better, your nervous system works a little bit faster, it conducts electricity a little bit quicker. So increasing tissue temperature and just getting the body warm is very, very valuable. Last but not least, it improves efficiency and coordination. So a lot of our athletes, especially as they're going through adolescence, they lose some coordination. They don't have the same level of rhythm that they would have had before. So this is a really critical piece. We can start to improve coordination. We can improve movement efficiency so that when we get into that training session, they're ready to perform at a high level. So here's just a quick warm-up example. General soccer athlete, we want to improve their movement quality and skills, and we want to develop base levels of strength. So here's how I'd warm them up. Very simply, we do a little bit of foam rolling, in this case for the calves or the lower leg and the quads, get them loosened up a little bit. We do 1 or 2 breathing resets, trying to drive air into specific areas of the body. And then we're going to warm them up. And it's a mixture of kind of lower level movement-based exercises. And then towards the end, we go through a blend of dynamic stretches or mobility exercises. And I love to superset them with movement skills. So something that works on a specific pattern and then makes them a little bit more athletic. So that gives you a little overview of the preparation. But I'm assuming what most of you want to see and what you want to hear about is how we actually train. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions here. But when we get down to brass tacks and you ask myself or you ask another coach, why do we train? It's simple. It's to improve physical characteristics. It's speed, power, quickness, agility, strength, conditioning. Whatever physical attribute you're trying to develop, there is a training strategy that you can use to develop it. But here's the really, really, really critical point. There's an order to all of this. You can't just train it willy-nilly. And I think one of the biggest issues that I see is a coach saying, well, little Johnny isn't fast enough or he's not strong enough. But when you look at the overarching program, they do a ton of conditioning, right? And they may smash little Johnny to the point where he's got no more juice left, and then they try and train speed. Or then they take him in the weight room and they try and get him strong, and it just doesn't work that way, right? So there's a system or a flow that you have to follow. You have to train these, high-level elements first. If it's very, what we would call nervous system dominant, right? So speed, power, quickness, you've got to do it first. Then you can go in the gym and you can work on slower level skills or more strength-focused skills. And then last but not least, when you're trying to just hang on a little bit, then we can do conditioning. So when we talk about reactive work, this is a lot of times when we talk about stuff that we do in the gym, it gets very polarizing. But when we talk about reactive work, this is our speed, our power, and our explosiveness. And again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I need to make sure I drive it home. You've got to train this at the start. There's nothing worse than a kid that's just smashed from a 2-hour practice and then working on the agility ladder or working on foot speed drills, because it's not going to work, right? They're too fatigued. So you've got to train this stuff at the beginning of a session when they're fresh. Something that you can always ask yourself too, that's going to get an immediate response, is can you make it competitive? And this works regardless of whether we're talking about 9 and 10-year-olds to professional athletes. If you can find a way to make the skill competitive, you're going to see an amazing response. So it could be working on your linear acceleration, like working on a 10-yard sprint, Who's going to win? It could be throwing a med ball. Who's going to throw it the farthest? It could be a jump. Who's going to jump on the highest box? There's lots of ways that you can make it competitive that's going to elicit a better response. Now, when it comes to this stuff, a lot of people will say one thing is better than the other. I think a lot of it comes down to context, the facilities that you have, what you're comfortable using as a coach. For me, I'm going to probably use a blend of all these. I'm going to use speed drills. I'm going to throw in some jumps. I'm going to do some med ball work. I like Olympic lifts. I'm not going to use them with everybody. A lot of my pros, I just don't have enough time with. But if we get a kid in our facility that's 12 or 13 years old, we can teach them the mechanics. We know we're going to have 5 or 6 years to develop them. We're going to teach them the Olympic lifts because it's another tool that we have in our toolbox. So here's a little video example. And this is from actually 2 off seasons ago. This is what I would call a vertical power day. So the guys are working on some vertical jumps, some vertical force production, and throwing some med balls in the back too. So you can see the guys were just doing some low hurdle jumps, working on a little bit of elasticity. In the back, we got Corey Miller throwing the med ball. A lot of familiar faces here if you guys follow the Indy 11. But, this is just what an average day looks like. We could do a vertical power day. There's other days where we'll do more change of direction work. And there's other days where we're just going to work on pure straight ahead acceleration, because all of this stuff is incredibly valuable when it comes to being on the pitch, right? A vertical power day in the gym doesn't sound super cool until you tell an athlete you're going to win more headers if you do this. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay. Or linear acceleration sounds cool to me as a strength coach or as a physical preparation coach. But to an athlete, I'm going to explain it as, look, you're going to win more balls. You're going to beat more guys 2 balls. And then they're like, okay, I'm in. So reactive work is absolutely critical, and it's something that you've got to start your sessions with. Now, the next piece is resistance training. And a lot of times when people hear resistance work, they think of like the huge power lifter that's squatting 600, 700, 800 pounds. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, I'm going to say this. I think strength training is a must for a lot of reasons. Strength training is a must for your lower level athletes because as an athlete gets stronger, there's a spillover effect. So not only do they get stronger, but they run faster. They're more powerful and they're more explosive. And the other benefit of strength training is they develop a little bit of body armor. So I've talked about this with numerous coaches, and Dave Tenney, who spent 9 years with the Seattle Sounders, he and I had a great discussion about this a while back. And, they've tracked years of data when he was with the club. And he said, one of the very common findings they have is guys that are serious about the weights are far less likely to suffer muscle pulls. And if they do suffer a muscle pull, they miss far less time. So there's just so many benefits to strength training. I think it's a critical piece of the puzzle, and it's something that all of us should be using. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit because it's not just strength for strength's sake. What I see a lot of times, and why strength training gets a bad rap amongst a lot of people, is because if you think about how our industry started, a lot of strength coaches were former football players. And they're former football players that then worked with football players. And then they became strength coaches, and they not only gave these football-based strength programs to football players, but they also gave the football strength program to baseball, to softball, to basketball, and to soccer. So now you have a program that's not specific to your sport. So I think what's important to note is, yeah, we want our athletes to be strong. But every athlete that we work with, strength is a foundational piece, but there's always got to be an element of speed to the lift. Right? We're not powerlifting, right? We can't take 7, 8, 9 seconds to, move a weight. It doesn't make sense, and it's not going to carry over to our sport. So there's always this blend of strength with speed when we lift. And something else that I think we do a really good job of is with our young athletes, it's moving from an internal load to an external load. Now, what do I mean by that? I think a lot of times we rush, especially our young kids, into the weight room way too fast. There's a time and a place for it. And sure, I may teach them how to, move with a barbell and teach them basic lifts like a squat or an RDL. But a lot of times I'm going to start with body weight first. I want to teach them how to squat, how to lunge, how to do push-ups, how to do pull-ups. It sounds crazy, but like old school PE class, there's a lot of value and benefit into the things that we did growing up. So I'm going to move most of my athletes from an internal loading structure first, and then over time, as they improve their movement competency, as they better understand their body and the movement patterns we're taking them through, then we can get into more external loading. Now, as far as setting up a strength training session, I don't think you need 8, 10, 12 exercises to be successful. And I think if you look at a lot of my programs, by the time you get to here, there's 5, maybe 6 exercises. There's always going to be a main lift. There's going to be maybe a squat, a bench press, a deadlift, and maybe not even in the way you would think about it, like a powerlifting meet, where it's like a back squat or a barbell bench press. We may do a kettlebell front squat. We may do a goblet squat. We may just do a body weight squat to try and train that pattern. What we're always going to do is find the main lift that best fits the athlete in front of us. And every athlete's a little bit different. So we're going to teach them those big patterns because they're important, but we're going to figure out how to load them based on their own body. So we're going to do a main lift. We're always going to do a couple accessory lifts. And this could be just general upper body strengthening work, which I still think has a lot of value in soccer, especially with regards to body armor and to holding opposing players off. But we're going to do a lot of lower body stuff too. So it could be what we would call split squats. Or split stance exercises. It could be split squats, lunges, step-ups, things that are done on one leg versus two, because the benefit there is we iron out some of those side-to-side imbalances. We're also going to do some dedicated hamstring work. And in fact, I'm going to do an entire webinar on this in a couple of months because so many athletes are dealing with hamstring issues now, and I don't think they have to. So main lift, 2 to 3 accessory lifts, and then from there, we're going to do some core training, because I don't know if I've ever seen an athlete up to this point whose core is strong or stable enough to perform at a high level. Now, the final piece of the puzzle here is our resiliency work. This is our conditioning. And if you have coached soccer for any extended period, if you've ever played the game, you realize work capacity is huge. It's one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. And we always have to ask ourselves are our athletes prepared to go out and play a 60, a 75, or a 90-minute match? Because frankly, if they can't, we've got an issue. It's something that we have to address. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we get focused on this idea of, well, we just have to condition them relentlessly, right? We have to throw as much at them as possible to try and make sure that they can go out and compete. But there's got to be a systematic approach to it. And, when you see it performed at the high level, it's a thing of beauty. So I hope I don't have any huge fans of Spain on this webinar, but watch Ari and Robin here on this run. So keep in mind, let me set the stage here. We're in the World Cup. It's kind of the qualifying rounds, but 80 minutes into the match, and watch this run that Robin makes. So just imagine that, 80th minute of a World Cup match. You've been running the whole time. He makes this amazing run under an extreme amount of fatigue and basically seals the deal, as if it wasn't sealed already, but kind of the icing on the cake. So the question becomes, how do we do that? And when it starts in the off season, I think one of the best things that you can do is just build general endurance. You don't even necessarily have to run, right? A lot of athletes, especially a lot of soccer players that are playing 9, 10, maybe even 11 months out of the year, the last thing I want them to do to start their off season is to run. Instead, what I want to do is just build some general endurance. So here you're going to see my guy Chad and his partner Danny. This is just them at IFAST going through some general conditioning circuits, pushing the prowler, sledgehammer, some rows. They're soccer bros, so we got a little bit of soccer work in there, kicking the ball around. But it doesn't have to be running based. There's so many different things that we can do to build general conditioning. Now, as the season gets close, and again, this is a whole nother topic, is getting guys ready for the preseason and getting them through the course of a season. But yeah, now at a certain point, you got to get serious. So in this case, we're going high intensity runs, lots of change of direction, and getting them ready for what these guys are going to endure in a week or two when they head to camp. So short sprints, and again, lots of change of direction, full intensity. So needless to say, I am not their best friend for these 2 to 3 weeks before they go to camp. But generally, they really like me once they're there because they're the fittest guys and they're the least likely to break down. Last but not least, let's talk a little bit about recovery and why this is so important. So why do we recover after a session? And I haven't really kind of geeked out on you guys up to this point. I'm going to try not to now. But everything is dictated by our nervous system. And you guys have probably heard of the fight or flight response, right? Maybe somebody jumps out from behind a corner and scares you, or you drink too much caffeine. There's a lot of ways to elicit this. The example that I always use is if you're out in the middle of the woods and you hear something like a tree branch crack, or something steps behind you. All of a sudden your heart rate rises, your pupils dilate. This is fight or flight. This is very, very good in this situation because if it's a predator or something like that, it's going to allow you to get away. In the weight room when we're training, it allows us to run fast and jump high and lift heavy things. So this is all fine and dandy when we're in the gym and when we're training. But too many of our athletes are locked in what we would call fight or flight all the time, right? So they're constantly stressed out. They're anxious. They're looking at their phone till 1, 2 in the morning. They're not sleeping enough. They're hopped up on stimulants, right? So they're not recovering. So we need to help them shift into this parasympathetic dominance or this rest and digest mode. And that's what we can do at the end of a training session. So again, these kids, they're in fight or flight all the time. And what we want to do as their coach is kickstart that recovery process. If you guys remember that bell curve, R7 at the end, where we kind of bring them back down to baseline, that should be our goal. So R7 is all about recovery. And this is the step that most people skip. It's the step that most people don't even address in the first place. But if you guys take nothing else away from this webinar, if you guys start employing this right now today with your athletes, I guarantee they're going to feel better because they're going to recover faster and they're going to be able to perform at a high level day in and day out. So there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do here, right? Like if you've got the tools, you can do cryo, you can do massage, you can do Normatec, you can do cold plunges. But let's be honest, a lot of us don't have access to that. So how do we do this on a Spartan budget? And luckily for you, there's a very simple way we can do it. We very simply get our athletes to sit down and take 10 deep breaths at the end of a session, right? We can do kind of this crocodile breathing position where they're face down. A lot of times I'll put a little mat underneath their belly, or it can just be laying up against a wall, get their buttocks all the way up against the wall, put their feet up, right? And then just have them take 10 deep breaths. Now, here's one really critical piece of this. The breaths, it can't just be short and shallow. Here's how you have to do it. You've got to inhale through the nose. I generally say take 3 to 5 seconds to inhale. Then you're going to exhale fully through the mouth. Take 6 to 8 seconds. Get all that air out of your body. And what you should feel, if you do a good job of it, you should feel your abs turn on. Now, here's the most important part. Once you get all that air out, try and pause for 3 to 5 seconds. At the end of a training session, this is going to be very challenging because your natural instinct is to immediately try and inhale and take another breath in. Don't let it happen. Or try, as you get these breaths going, the deeper into the breaths that you get when you're on 7, 8, 9, 10, really work to hold that exhale as long as you possibly can. And if you guys just add that one little piece to the puzzle, I guarantee your athletes, when they walk out, they're going to be like, man, coach, I feel great. When they go home, they're going to sleep better. They're going to be able to relax and unwind. And ultimately for you, that means an athlete that's going to perform at a higher level. So to bring all this together, we kind of touched on the 3 main pieces here. For every great training session, we have to prepare. We go through our release, our reset, our readiness. We ramp our athlete up. so that when we train, we're ready to go. We hit our reactive work, our speed and our power. We strength train with weights, maybe body weight, doesn't really matter, but we build some muscle. And then last but not least, our resiliency, where we condition our athletes and we make sure they're ready to go out and play their sport at a high level. And then the last piece is our recovery. And this is where we kickstart that recovery process and we make sure that our athletes feel amazing when they walk out the door. So that's kind of step by step how I set up an off-season training session. And I want to leave you guys with a parting thought. The young woman pictured here, her name is K-Dog. And I think I probably alluded to up front, I've gotten to work with really, really high-level soccer players in my career. And it's been a blessing to do that. And it keeps me motivated. It's a constantly challenging thing for me to work on. But as amazing as all these athletes are, this young woman may have had the strongest impact on my career because I've known her for 8 years now. I often refer to her as my little sister. But I started with K-Dog. She was 15 years old. She couldn't even make it through her high school season because her back was in so much pain. And so it was literally a 3-year process between her sophomore, junior, and senior years to get her fully rehabilitated, to get her strong, and to get her conditioned and ready to play at the next level. And I tell you all this because as coaches, I think sometimes we maybe fail to realize how impactful we are on our athletes. But I can tell you this, every time this girl works out for the rest of her life, I have positively impacted her. So regardless of, how you're coaching, whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's soccer, regardless, just keep in mind the impact that we have on the young people that we work with day in and day out, because, we can be a hugely positive impact on these young people. It's something that I always try and do. And I always want to make sure that these young athletes know that I am a coach that truly cares and wants the best for them. So to try and pull all this together, if you're local and you want to connect, you want to learn more about what we do, by all means, check us out online, ifastonline.com/soccer. Gives you a little bit more detail into the programs and services that we offer. As well, feel free, you want to get on the phone, give us a call, shoot us an email. We just love to chat, tell you more about what we do and how we might be able to help your young athletes or maybe even your club get to the next level. Also, social. We try and do a bunch of different stuff here, whether it's our YouTube page, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I would love to say that we're the best at this. We're not, but we're always trying to get better. And I'm a huge believer in constantly educating people. It's why I wanted to do this this webinar tonight. We're constantly creating content, whether it's written, whether it's video. So if you want just kind of a more laid back approach to find out more about what we do, by all means, check those out. Last but not least, save the date. We all know that hamstring issues are rampant in the sport of soccer. Luckily, Josie Altidore, who I'm assuming is playing tonight, this guy missed a lot of big matches over the 3 years leading up to this because of hamstring issues. And, whether it's him, whether it's other players, what are they doing to get healthy? How are they getting back to the highest levels? And while I don't claim to have all the answers, I think I've got a few. And I think I've got a fairly unique approach to keeping your athletes' hamstrings healthy. So on Tuesday, January 9th, I am going to do my next webinar. And we're going to talk about bulletproofing the hamstrings and why you need a really well-rounded approach to keep the hamstrings healthy, because I think a lot of people are missing the boat on this. And if anybody's selling you on one exercise or one specific strategy to keep the hamstrings healthy, I think we're missing the mark. It's got to be a more well-rounded approach. So I'm sure you'll hear more about this, but you can go to bit.ly/bulletproof-hamstrings and register for that. So as I mentioned, guys, thank you so much for coming on here. Truly appreciate it. I'm going to open this up to Q&A, which I believe is open. And I think I just saw somebody raise their hand, so I'm going to try and check that out as well. So yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free, drop them in the Q&A. I'll also open up the chat function too. And like I said, if there's anybody that wants to hang out, has questions at all, by all means, please let me know. Anybody? Questions? Okay. I see somebody raise their hand. I'm going to try and call on you here. Oh, here we go. All right, Ronald, I'm trying to upgrade you here so you can talk. If not, if you can drop it into the webinar chat, go ahead and do that. All right, guys. I think I don't know if I have done this incorrectly, but I can't see if you guys have questions, and there's nothing in the Q&A. So plenty of options available for you to hit me up. Let me know. Like I said, if there's anything I can do to help you guys better understand the training process, if you have questions about off-season training or just strategies that you may want to use, by all means, let me know, because oh, there's a question in the chat. Hang on. Let me go look. Where can we find more information on the process? Okay, so as far as the R7 process goes, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've created stuff like this for other trainers and coaches, not necessarily for soccer coaches. If you would like, I can't, well, when this is done, I'm going to actually post this along with the slides. So I'll email you guys all of that information tomorrow. If you have specific questions for me, I would just say to feel free, go ahead and shoot me an email. That would work just fine. And like I said, specifics are probably better answered that way anyways. But yeah, anything that I can answer specifically for you, just shoot me an email and I'll definitely get back to you as soon as I can. Anything else? Other questions I can answer? Awesome, guys. Okay, again, if there's anything that you need from me, anything that we can follow up down the line, and just basically anything I can do to help you or your athletes have a little bit more success, by all means, let me know. But sincerely appreciate all of you coming on here tonight, and have a good one, okay? Oh, hang on. All right, I got one more. Daughter had high ankle sprain last season and sore ankles and knees this season. What can we do to help? Well, Lee, great question. I would say the first thing you need to figure out is where her starting position is and maybe what deficits she has in range of motion. So I'm not going to give you the shameless plug here, but if you're in the Indianapolis area, again, my business partner, Bill Hartman, is a physical therapist. He does a free 30-minute consult. So that's one option. But wherever you're at, what I would suggest is finding a local physical therapist to try and get her back to full strength first. And then you can start building from there, because, the one thing that I found with high ankle sprains is if you don't really do a good job rehabbing them, they're likely to come back. And I would assume that, the ankles are driving a lot of the knee stuff as well. When it comes to knee pain, what we find is a lot of times the knee is kind of like a dumb joint, for lack of a better term. So if we address the ankles below it and we address the hips above it, a lot of times the knee stuff cleans up. So what I would do is try and find a qualified PT, get her ankles checked, make sure that she's moving as well as she needs to first. And then I would imagine from there, not only will the knees feel better, but then you can start building her off-season program off of that. Okay. Anything else? Okay, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And if there's anything I can do to help, please either shoot me a call, drop me an email, whatever works for you. Okay. Thanks again, and have a great night.